Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid paid $3 million for a perfect bride, and when perfection failed, blood paid the price. Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid built his empire in Dubai with oil money, flashy investments, and a ridiculous obsession with having everything appear flawless. Yet despite owning cars wrapped in gold, private islands, and a tower named after him, he couldn't shake the twisted idea that a man of his status deserved a wife untouched by any past, a living trophy representing purity and power. So he commanded his staff to search far beyond the Gulf, far beyond the region's wealthy families, into places where desperation makes people easy to control. And that hunt led them to a small coastal village in the Philippines where life moved slow. Families survived on fish and borrowed hope, and dreams of escape faded as quickly as daylight. And in that fragile world lived Maria de la Cruz, a polite young girl who still believed that maybe life had something better waiting for her someday, even if every morning she woke up with the same empty pockets and worried parents. And when the Sheikh's people swooped in with fancy promises of a fairy tale marriage, a luxurious life, and financial rescue for her struggling family, the offer hit them like a miracle dropped from the sky. And Maria's parents, worn down by hunger and debts they could no longer ignore, convinced themselves that this was destiny, even though Maria's heart pounded with fear because nothing about these strangers felt normal. But hope crushed caution, and soon she was signing papers she didn't understand, trading every piece of her future for the sake of people she loved. And the Sheikh, satisfied with the deal of a lifetime, transferred a jaw-dropping $3 million as a dowry, bragging to his inner circle that he secured a perfect virgin bride from a far-off land, while Maria boarded a private jet with no idea that she was not being rescued but purchased, not being promised love but trapped inside a luxury nightmare she could never run from. Maria arrived in Dubai expecting glittering freedom, but the moment she stepped off the jet, the heat and luxury felt suffocating rather than exciting, and the massive palace that stood before her looked more like an immaculate cage carved from gold, staffed with silent strangers who stared at her as though she were a product on display. And every hallway she walked through was monitored by tiny cameras tucked into corners like unblinking eyes waiting for her to slip up, while guards lingered everywhere, pretending to protect her, but actually making sure she never forgot she now belonged to someone else. And Fatima, the Sheikh's older sister, immediately took charge of her transformation, analyzing every detail of Maria's posture, skin, clothing, and manners with judgment sharp enough to cut through bone, forcing her into hours of training on how to walk, how to stand, how to breathe like a woman who supposedly represented purity and elite honor, pushing strict cultural rules upon her with zero room for mistakes. And Maria learned fast that even her silence had to be perfect, because Fatima believed the family's reputation rested solely on this foreign girl's ability to appear flawless, and every slip was met with cold stares reminding her what would happen if she disappointed them. While the Sheikh rarely visited, preferring to watch from a distance through surveillance feeds, treating her like a prized exhibit he wanted to admire without touching yet, convinced that anticipation would make the final moment of possession even sweeter. And Maria, trapped behind designer gowns and heavy jewelry, tried to ignore the panic building in her chest as she realized she had signed away more than her freedom, since every groan of the palace's locked doors reminded her that this wasn't a romantic new beginning but a calculated purchase, and the warm smiles she once forced for photos had already begun to fade into a blank, terrified stare that no one in the palace cared to notice, because to them she was no longer a girl with dreams, but an investment expected to pay off in honor and perfection. The wedding day blasted into Maria's life like a high-budget movie she never auditioned for, with every inch of the palace dripping in luxury meant to impress the world and disguise the fear tightening in her chest, while designer gowns, glittering jewelry, and layers of makeup transformed her into someone she barely recognized. A living doll placed center stage in a celebration that was never about love but about status. And the elite guests filling the grand ballroom acted like she was a rare artifact discovered by a powerful king, sipping champagne and whispering gossip about the insanely high dowry that proved the Sheikh's dominance. And the ceremony itself felt like an extended performance, with Maria forced to move in perfect rhythm beside the Sheikh, flashing a practiced smile that hid how much she wanted to bolt for the nearest exit. And Fatima stood nearby like a strict director, ensuring the show played out flawlessly, eyeing every detail from the angle of Maria's chin to the length of her steps, making sure the world saw her brother's bride as a symbol of pure perfection, while the Sheikh took pride in the admiration and jealousy around him, feeding off the idea that he now owned something no other man had touched. And when vows were exchanged, Maria's heart kept begging for a miracle, though the applause roaring around her drowned out every internal scream. And once the ring slid onto their fingers, confetti blasted like a celebration of victory rather than union, cementing the contract that chained her to a man she barely knew, with photographers capturing every fake smile she delivered, adding images to a future news story she didn't realize she'd become. And as fireworks lit the sky outside, her family thousands of miles away celebrated the money that saved their lives, unaware that Maria's own life was slipping deeper into a dark corner where happiness had no place and escape no longer existed. Inside the penthouse suite towering over Dubai's skyline, the celebration glitter faded fast, replaced by a cold atmosphere thick with expectation, as the Sheikh led Maria into a room that felt less like a honeymoon setting and more like a luxury interrogation chamber. And the silence between them carried a heavy tension built on his obsession with proving that his multi-million-dollar bride was exactly what he believed he paid for, while Maria's nerves twisted into dread because she could feel the truth creeping up on her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. And when he signaled for Ahmed, the private doctor trusted by the royal family, to enter, the mood turned clinical and terrifying, stripping away any illusion that this night would be about romance. Since the Sheikh wasn't searching for affection but evidence, and Maria stood frozen as Ahmed approached with medical equipment, acting like this was just another task on his schedule, while she prayed the ground would open and swallow her whole, knowing the secret she carried was never meant to be exposed in such a ruthless manner. And the Sheikh paced back and forth with impatience boiling into anger, seeing this procedure as the moment of truth that would validate his pride, because to him purity wasn't emotional or spiritual. It was physical proof he could use to brag about his power, and when the results finally came, Ahmed's nervous hesitation confirmed what Maria feared, that the Sheikh's twisted fantasy of owning a perfect, untouched bride shattered instantly. And the air exploded into rage as the Sheikh's ego took a direct hit, seeing the lost status, the wasted money, the embarrassment if society ever found out he had been fooled. And Maria tried to speak, tried to breathe, but the room filled with the kind of silence that comes before disasters, as the Sheikh stormed out in fury, leaving Ahmed pale and trembling. And in that moment, Maria realized she wasn't a wife in danger of being unloved. She was a possession judged defective, and defective objects in this palace didn't get forgiven. They got replaced, removed, or erased. Fatima stormed into the suite like a force of pure fury, her eyes burning with a rage that didn't bother hiding its intent. Because in her mind, Maria had not just shattered the Sheikh's expectations, but humiliated their entire bloodline. And the idea that their family name could be mocked by the world over a girl sold as pure and revealed as flawed twisted Fatima's pride into something violent, driving her to seize control of the situation before Khalid's anger turned into reckless mistakes that could create headlines. And while Ahmed stood in the corner shaking, thinking about how easily a doctor can vanish when royalty needs silence, Youssef received a silent call that made his blood run cold, knowing that his loyalty positioned him as the one who handled problems the public must never learn about. And although he had seen many ugly tasks in service of power, this one struck deeper because Maria looked so small and terrified, not like a criminal, but like a child sacrificed to the wrong monster. Yet orders were orders, and Fatima delivered them with zero hesitation, claiming that honor demanded cleansing, a twisted tradition used as an excuse for cruelty. And the Sheikh, pacing nearby like a caged beast, refused to listen to any explanation Maria tried to offer, since he convinced himself that she betrayed him long before they even met, turning his heartbreak into a dangerous storm. And Maria begged within her own mind for a chance to live. But in that palace, survival wasn't earned by innocence. It was determined by whether powerful people still found you useful. And to them, Maria had already lost her value the second a medical test said she wasn't what they paid for. So Yusuf was instructed to take her far from the palace, far from cameras and curious eyes, with the mission to erase the evidence of their mistake, while the Sheikh stayed behind, gripping his destroyed pride, and Fatima cleaned up the narrative, determined to bury the truth under a perfect lie that protected their status, even if it meant burying a human life along with it. Maria vanished from the palace without a single goodbye. Driven into the dark desert where the city lights couldn't witness what powerful people do when they panic. And Yusuf, whose loyalty had always been unquestioned, felt his hands shake on the steering wheel as he carried out orders that made every mile feel heavier, because no matter how much he tried to silence his conscience, he knew he was transporting a terrified girl to a fate she never deserved. While back at the palace, Fatima moved with icy precision, erasing the truth piece by piece before rumors could catch fire, paying off staff members to alter security footage and threatening anyone who hesitated with consequences they couldn't survive. And Ahmed, desperate to protect himself, deleted every trace of the examination results, shredding documents and wiping systems clean. But the guilt clung to him like a weight he couldn't shake, turning every heartbeat into a reminder that he helped destroy a life. And the Sheikh retreated into silence, pretending Maria had never existed, sipping expensive liquor to drown the humiliation burning in his chest, convinced that if the world learned he spent millions on a woman who wasn't what he believed, his empire would crumble under laughter rather than respect. So he approved Fatima's plan to release a statement claiming Maria stole part of the dowry and ran away, flipping the narrative so that the victim became the villain, and the media, hungry for scandal, spread the story with no questions asked, branding Maria as a greedy runaway who abandoned a life most women would die for, while Yusuf returned with dirt on his clothes and a hollow stare, carrying a silence that locked the truth behind his clenched teeth. And Ahmed couldn't sleep at night because he kept imagining Maria's last moments. Yet despite all their efforts to bury what happened, fate has a way of unearthing secrets, and the deeper they tried to hide the crime, the more cracks began forming in the lies they built to protect their pride and power. Months passed, but the secret refused to stay buried, eating away at Yusuf until guilt became a constant nightmare, clawing at his sanity. And every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maria's face and heard the deafening silence of that desert night, pushing him closer to the edge where loyalty and morality finally collided. And when international investigators began sniffing around after a suspicious anonymous tip hinted that the Sheikh's runaway bride didn't run at all, Yusuf cracked under the pressure, his conscience too heavy to carry anymore. So he secretly leaked a recording he made the night of the disappearance, capturing Fatima's chilling orders and the Sheikh's furious demand to erase Maria from their lives. And once that audio reached global news outlets, the story exploded like dynamite, shattering the royal family's carefully constructed image of untouchable perfection. And suddenly, the same media that once praised the luxurious wedding turned into wolves tearing apart every unexplained detail, exposing lies, dowry payments, and missing timelines. While activists demanded justice for a powerless girl whose only crime was being born into poverty and sold into a nightmare, and Ahmed, terrified that his role would be uncovered next, confessed to his part in the cover-up, handing over destroyed medical records and recounting the truth he once tried to bury, and the Sheikh's empire began collapsing under the weight of worldwide outrage, his businesses losing partners and his wealth becoming a reminder of corruption instead of success. While Fatima desperately tried to spin new lies, but every excuse only dragged her deeper into the firestorm, and Maria's name, once whispered as a scandal, transformed into a rallying cry for victims who had been silenced by power, turning her into a symbol of how fragile life becomes when it's controlled by people who think money makes them gods. And as court trials launched and governments demanded accountability, the legacy the Sheikh had built for decades disintegrated overnight, proving that even in a world where wealth buries secrets deep, the truth eventually claws its way back to the surface, refusing to stay silent for anyone.